Imagine waking up one morning to a world where the diagnosis of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's is not an unchangeable sentence, but a challenge with real solutions and tangible hope. For millions of families around the globe, these devastating diseases have long signified a slow, heart-wrenching decline, a journey marked by fading memories, lost identities, and relentless uncertainty. But right now, at this very moment, a new chapter in the battle against neurodegenerative diseases is unfolding, and it is being written at a record pace by scientists, biotech companies, and regulators who are daring to challenge decades of disappointment. But here's the big question. Is this bold push for progress finally unlocking cures? Or are we moving too fast and risking repeating the mistakes of the past? Let's start with the scale of the problem. Today, Alzheimer's disease alone affects more than 55 million people worldwide. That's more than the entire population of countries like South Korea or Spain, and the numbers are rising inexorably. By the year 2050, experts predict that over 139 million people could be living with Alzheimer's. Parkinson's disease, the second most common neurodegenerative disorder, currently impacts more than 10 million people across the globe. These conditions don't just steal memory or movement. They steal independence, dignity, and, ultimately, life itself. For families, the impact is immeasurable. 1 in every 9 people over the age of 65 in the United States will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Every single year, this proportion grows as populations age in North America, Europe, Japan, and increasingly, in emerging economies as well. The annual global cost of dementia care is estimated to be over $1 trillion, a staggering figure, almost equal to the annual GDP of countries like the Netherlands or Saudi Arabia. Yet, for all this investment, the treatments available today do little more than slow the inevitable. For decades, the story has been one of heartbreak, frustration, and unmet promise. But now, against this daunting backdrop, 2 American biotech companies, ProMIS Neurosciences and NKGen Biotech, are grabbing headlines and igniting cautious optimism. Their secret weapons? Not just scientific innovation, but regulatory acceleration. Both have received coveted Fast Track and expanded access designations from the United States Food and Drug Administration. These special regulatory pathways are designed to catapult the most promising therapies past the traditional bottlenecks of drug development. In effect, they offer an express lane, faster feedback from regulators, earlier access for patients, and the tantalizing prospect of making a difference while time still matters. Let's dig into what makes these designations so important. The Fast Track pathway, created in the late 1980s, was born out of another epidemic, HIV and AIDS. At the time, activists and scientists pushed the FDA to move faster, arguing that people were dying while bureaucratic processes dragged on. This led to a new approach, one that balanced urgency with scientific rigor. Since then, Fast Track has brought dozens of life-changing therapies to market sooner, including treatments for cancer, rare genetic disorders, and infectious diseases. But it has also sparked heated debates about safety, evidence, and the true meaning of medical innovation. Now, the Fast Track torch has passed to neurodegeneration. ProMIS Neurosciences is at the forefront with its experimental monoclonal antibody, PMN 310. Unlike previous drugs that target the infamous sticky amyloid plaques, the dense, insoluble clumps found in the brains of Alzheimer's patients, PMN 310 takes a more precise approach. It zeroes in on the most toxic, soluble forms of amyloid beta, known as oligomers. These small aggregates are now believed by many neuroscientists to be the main culprits behind nerve cell death, cognitive decline, and the relentless progression of the disease. Why does this matter? Because previous antibody drugs, including those that made headlines with FDA approvals in the past few years, often came with a heavy price. Serious side effects like brain swelling and bleeding, collectively known as amyloid-related imaging abnormalities, or ARIA. These complications forced many patients to stop treatment or, in some tragic cases, led to hospitalization and even death. By targeting only the soluble, most harmful forms of amyloid beta, ProMIS hopes to sidestep these dangers altogether. The company's journey so far has been carefully staged. After completing an initial Phase 1A safety trial in healthy volunteers, ProMIS has now launched a Phase 1B trial called Precise Aid, testing PMN 310 in patients with early-stage Alzheimer's. This study will not just look for adverse effects, but also probe for changes in blood and spinal fluid biomarkers. Early signals that the drug is hitting its intended target. Interim results are expected in the middle of the year 2026, with final data to follow later that year. Neil Warma, the company's CEO, is clear about the ambition. We designed PMN 310 with a goal of providing patients with a safer and more efficacious treatment option, which we believe represents the next generation of Alzheimer's therapeutics. But ProMIS is not alone in this race. NKGen Biotech brings a radically different strategy to the table, one that does not focus on amyloid at all. Their therapy, troculeucel, harnesses the power of the body's own immune defenders, natural killer, or NK, cells. These cells are harvested from the patient, then supercharged in the laboratory to enhance their ability to fight the chronic, autoimmune-driven neuroinflammation, now recognized as a key driver in many neurodegenerative diseases. This is not science fiction. In early trials, troculeucel has shown signs of reducing inflammation and improving markers of neuronal health, without causing the adverse events seen with some antibody therapies. The FDA's Expanded Access Program now allows up to 20 patients with various neurodegenerative conditions, including Parkinson's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, frontotemporal dementia, and more, to receive troculeucel while formal clinical trials continue. This means patients who would otherwise have no options can try a cutting-edge therapy in real time. Paul Y. Song, CEO of NKGen, is unequivocal. We believe there is ample scientific and clinical rationale to offer this to patients with other neurodegenerative diseases for which there is no effective therapy and little hope. Let's pause here and reflect. This is unprecedented. Never before have so many different neurodegenerative diseases been targeted by a single therapy in an FDA-sanctioned access program. The rationale rests on a growing body of research showing that autoimmune neuroinflammation triggered by misfolded proteins like amyloid, alpha-synuclein, or tau is a common thread running through Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, and related disorders. By restoring immune balance, troculeucel could potentially slow or even halt the progression of symptoms across this entire spectrum. But with great speed comes real risk. The very regulatory shortcuts that make these programs possible have also drawn criticism from watchdog groups, medical ethicists, and some clinicians. The United States Department of Health and Human Services Inspector General's Office has already issued warnings. Accelerated approvals, while well-intentioned, can sometimes allow drugs onto the market before all the evidence is in. This can threaten patient safety, erode trust in the regulatory system, and, if things go wrong, lead to costly, painful setbacks for science and society alike. History offers sobering lessons. In the early 2000s, the FDA's accelerated approval pathway led to the release of several cancer drugs that promised much but delivered little in terms of real-world benefit. In some cases, confirmatory trials failed to show any improvement over standard care, forcing regulators to withdraw approvals and leaving patients and their families feeling betrayed. More recently, controversies have erupted around Alzheimer's drugs that won approval based largely on biomarker changes, rather than clear evidence of cognitive improvement. Critics warn that the same mistakes could be repeated if due diligence is sacrificed on the altar of speed. On the other side, patient advocacy groups and many clinicians argue that for diseases with no effective treatments, every month matters. Maria Carrillo, Chief Science Officer of the Alzheimer's Association, puts it bluntly. Investment in research is crucial to accelerate progress in Alzheimer's treatment and care. For many patients, waiting for the perfect trial or the gold standard evidence means never getting a chance at all. The Expanded Access Program, in particular, is seen as a lifeline, a way to offer hope, collect real-world data, and perhaps spot early signals of benefit or harm before full approval is granted. So where does this leave us? Picture two diverging futures, unfolding in parallel as these fast-track therapies move forward. In one scenario, ProMIS Neurosciences PMN 310 continues to demonstrate both safety and meaningful biomarker improvements in its Phase 1b trial. This paves the way for a pivotal Phase 3 study, which, if successful, could lead to FDA approval within just a few years, rather than the typical decade or more of traditional development. Meanwhile, NKGen Biotech's Expanded Access Program provides relief and hope to patients with Parkinson's, ALS, and other conditions, while its own own Phase 2A trial for troculeucel uncovers not just safety, but measurable improvements in memory, movement, and daily functioning. In this optimistic vision, what once seemed impossible, a genuine disease-modifying therapy for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or ALS, becomes reality. But there is another, more sobering scenario. If accelerated approvals move too quickly, experimental drugs could reach patients before all safety risks are understood. Delays in confirmatory trials, as seen in previous cases, could leave patients exposed to therapies that ultimately fail to deliver. The FDA's own Inspector General has called for stricter standards and better post-marketing surveillance to ensure that new treatments really do what they claim. If unexpected side effects surface, or if benefits fail to materialize, public trust could take years to rebuild. As history has shown, false hope can devastate families and communities as much as the diseases themselves. Beyond these company-specific stories, there's a broader revolution happening in how we detect, diagnose, and monitor neurodegenerative disease. New diagnostic tools, especially blood-based plasma biomarker tests, are transforming the landscape. These tests can identify the earliest signs of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's years before symptoms appear, opening the door to preventive therapies and truly personalized medicine. Dr. Ronald Peterson, director of the Mayo Clinic Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, notes that early detection through plasma tests can significantly improve patient outcomes. This is a game changer. Imagine a future where a simple blood test at your annual checkup could reveal your risk for Alzheimer's, years or even decades before memory loss begins. This would allow doctors to tailor interventions, monitor disease progression, and offer new drugs at the moment they are most likely to work. For researchers and biotech firms, these biomarkers serve as powerful tools to measure drug efficacy quickly and accurately, speeding up clinical trials and reducing costs. Yet, these advances also introduce new ethical dilemmas. Who should be tested? How should risk be communicated to patients and families? What happens if a test reveals a high likelihood of future disease, but no effective treatment is available? These questions are not just technical. They touch the very heart of how we, as a society, think about aging, memory, and the value of hope. Turning back to the companies at the center of this story, both ProMIS Neurosciences and NKGen Biotech are at critical junctures. ProMIS has already demonstrated that PMN 310 can selectively bind to toxic amyloid oligomers, and its ongoing Phase 1b trial aims to confirm both safety and biomarker response in real patients. If the data are positive, the company could rapidly scale up to a Phase 3 trial involving hundreds or even thousands of participants. The Fast Track designation means the FDA will provide regular feedback, potentially allowing for rolling submissions of data and quicker review times. NKGen Biotech, meanwhile, has navigated its own challenges. After delisting from the Nasdaq Stock Exchange earlier this year, the company now trades on OTC markets under the symbol NKGen. Despite financial turbulence, its scientific ambitions remain undiminished. Its Phase 2A Alzheimer's trial is expected to complete enrollment by the second quarter of the year 2026, with initial results anticipated by the end of that year. The company's expanded access program is already collecting real-world data from up to 20 patients, which could justify broader trials and, if successful, set a precedent for other cell-based therapies in neurology. It's worth noting that the momentum is not limited to just these two companies. Pharmaceutical giants like Johnson & Johnson are also in the race, with their own monoclonal antibody candidate, Posidyne, recently receiving FDA Fast Track designation. Academic centers, like the Ottawa Memory Clinic, are collaborating on trials, and leading scientists such as Dr. Richard Bergeron are driving innovation from the inside. The entire ecosystem, from small biotechs to multinational corporations, from patient advocates to federal regulators, is converging around the urgent need for progress. The implications of success are profound. If even one of these therapies proves both safe and effective, the ripple effects would be felt across society. Healthcare systems could shift from expensive, late-stage care to earlier, more effective interventions. Families could reclaim years of meaningful connection with loved ones. The global economy could save hundreds of billions of dollars annually, money that could be reinvested in prevention, education, and broader public health. But the stakes are equally high if things go wrong. Approval of an ineffective or unsafe drug could set back the entire field, chilling investment, fueling public skepticism, and potentially causing harm to vulnerable patients. The balance between speed and safety has never been more delicate. Regulators, companies, and advocates must walk a tightrope, moving fast enough to make a difference, but not so fast that they compromise the very people they aim to help. What does all of this mean for you, the viewer? First, it's a reminder that the future of medicine is not just about scientific breakthroughs, but about the systems and policies that govern how those breakthroughs reach patients. If you or someone you love is affected by Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, or a related disorder, now is the time to become informed. Ask your doctor about clinical trials, expanded access programs, and emerging diagnostic tests. Early participation can sometimes mean access to therapies years before they become widely available, and can also help advance the science that will benefit others. Second, this is a call to action for everyone who cares about health innovation. Support research, demand transparency from both biotech companies and regulators, and stay engaged as new data emerges. The public's attention matters. When people are informed, they can demand accountability, push for ethical standards, and celebrate real progress when it happens. As more therapies enter the pipeline, following trial results and FDA updates becomes a practical way to stay ahead of the curve, and to avoid being swept up by hype or misinformation. And finally, remember that hope and skepticism can and should coexist. The accelerated pathways of today are a daring experiment, one that will shape the lives of millions in the years to come. If the optimism of ProMIS and NKGen is rewarded by robust trial outcomes in 2026, the world may finally see therapies that not only slow, but potentially halt the devastation of neurodegeneration. If not, these programs will still provide invaluable lessons about the limits of science, the power of regulatory innovation, and the enduring human quest for answers. Here's one last little-known fact. The very tools making these accelerated trials possible, like advanced plasma biomarker tests, digital cognitive assessments, and AI-driven trial matching, are themselves products of previous waves of medical innovation and regulatory reform. In other words, progress begets progress. The pace of change is not just in the drugs we develop, but in the way we diagnose, monitor, and ultimately prevent disease in the first place. So as the world watches this high-stakes experiment unfold, we invite you to stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. If you want to keep up with the next breakthroughs in global healthcare and technology, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Your curiosity and support help shine a light on the stories that matter most. Which side of this experiment do you think will win out, hope or hype? Let us know in the comments below. And stay tuned